Hi everyone, welcome to our virtual learning lab. The subject for today that we'll be talking about is transformative sales coaching. And I am Pam Marinko. I'm the CEO and founder of Proficient Learning, and we've been in business since 2005. And pretty much most of that time, we've been working with Ed McCarthy from Echelon in partnership and collaboration for just about that duration. So I'll let Ed go ahead and introduce himself.
Thank you so much, Pam. As Pam said, my name is Ed McCarthy. I am the CEO and founder of Echelon Performance, coaching analytics firm here, based here in New Jersey. And Pam, I got to ask you before we even dive into this, when was the last time that there was an L10 and you and I were not at least standing next to each other at some point of that, right? This is really odd, but
Never.
Still going. Yeah, exactly. It'll be a great conversation, but it just feels weird not to be at L10. When Pam reached out, and again, thank you so much for reaching out, Pam, and you said you wanted to talk about sales coaching, that's obviously two reasons for me to get excited. Number one, to work again with you, and also to talk about a topic that we are very passionate about in terms of sales coaching. And before we dive into the content for today, there's a good reason that we are so passionate about it. It's because when you look at the work that, the people on this session do, the people in leadership development and sales training and on the development side of the business, sales managers are really what I like to call the last line of defense for anything that you want to do with the field. So whether it's POA and product training, whether it's a new customer engagement model like Challenger, something with field force effectiveness, your team, or maybe if it's just you, do so much to make sure that that rollout goes smoothly. And when it's done, you're really turning over the keys to that to the first line managers in the field to coach to specific components of that investment. So the framework or the lens that we'd like you to use for today's conversation is this question: what if all of the first line sales managers in your organization coached their people the way your top performers do? And a second part of that question is, what impact do you think that would have on sales results? And then let's take it even a step further. What impact do you think that would have on the conversations that you have with leadership around budgeting and support for the initiatives that you want to have, right? If you knew that you were turning over this initiative, this investment, to a team of coaches that were absolutely primed and ready to coach and support it, what impact would that have? And that's what we mean by transformative sales coaching, really rethinking the role and equipping your managers in a way that they directly support your strategic goals. So with that kickoff, I'm going to throw it back to Pam for more.
Thanks, Ed, for more. Yeah, and it's really providing the framework or the lens through which we need to look at what is transformation and what are we talking about. So in terms of what have we had available and what do we have now and what do we need to put together in this process, it's really three pieces. So the technology is the first piece that's really important. And of course, this is an MCoach presentation, so we will be talking a little bit about MCoach, but the main priority there is making sure that there is an excellent tool in place to capture what the manager is doing or the first line manager is doing in the field, in the coaching realm. The second piece is, once we have that data, what can we learn from that? How can we dig deeper into that data and understand what does it mean in terms of driving performance? Is what they're doing driving performance and results at the rep level? Is it effective coaching, or maybe is it not? And what we'll discover is, where are those gaps? And that's precisely then where we focus with targeted training. So it's an amazingly wonderful thing to have specific research and data-backed information or informing our learning objectives and informing how we build that training, because we can pinpoint precisely what needs to be improved and how to improve that. And that is really exciting on the back end, because it really does drive behavior change, which then we will measure again through the platform through the technology, and we'll be able to see that performance improvement. So with that, let me go ahead and just talk for a second about mCoach, and specifically that it has been designed with the results in mind. We launched this platform about 5 years ago, and with the intention that it really was part of this overall concept of how do we make coaches better? How do we build better coaches? And we want to help those managers be in those conversations, be in those interactions, and drive performance from their reps in the most efficient way possible and the most effective way possible, and collect everything together in one place so that literally everything is in the palm of your hand as a manager. And it makes it easy or easier to have that coaching conversation and really focus on what's important, which is the sales rep and the performance in the field. How do they help that rep improve? And so by using this platform, it does foster high quality coaching conversations. And it does focus in on specifically on the skills and the behaviors and the competencies that are driving your initiatives forward, ultimately driving performance with your reps. So that's really the key behind this platform and the development of it. And it was developed by managers for managers with a manager's mindset in play as we develop this. It really is not intended to be an HR tool or a check the box tool or something that comes from IT or technology. It's really designed to be an integrated platform that helps build better coaches and improve performance. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide that talks about analytics and insights. Over to you, Ed.
Thanks, Pam. And to your point, it really does come down to the technology, right? If there's not a tool in place for managers to use, and when I say use, I mean capture really effective written coaching, right? Excellent summaries of the day and progress and development, then this whole system, this whole idea of transformative coaching falls apart. Because once that coaching is captured, we need to be able to have a system in place that turns all of that information and data and coaching into insights that a learning and development team can then use to, like Pam said, drive that targeted training. And that's where we come in. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the CEO of Echelon Performance. For the last 14 years, we've spent our time, I would use a contrast or a metaphor where I know this industry is inundated with big data. And if we were in the beer making business, the big data would be Budweiser. And we're more like that craft brewery down the street that puts out about 6 cases of IPA a year, right? So we're kind of the small data. We're the hands-on manual review of the written coaching that lives in mCoach. And over those years, we've developed a system of analysis through which we can identify in a very quantifiable way what great coaching looks like in any organization. And it really boils down to 3 things. So the things that we're going to look for in any organization, number 1 is consistency. The best managers, the best coaches in your organization spend more time face-to-face with their people, whether it's virtual or whether it's live. I mean, given current conditions, it's more virtual. So they're getting in front of their team more often, and they're also using mCoach more regularly in a way that reflects those conversations. So that those 2 things together are what we call consistency. And we've been able to measure that your best coaches in any organization are using the tools and having those conversations much more frequently than their average peers. The second thing that we look at is focus, right? So once people are out in the field, the next question that any organization has to answer is, well, what are these people coaching to? And again, more often than not, your top coaches, your best performing managers are coaching to the skills and behaviors that actually drive your strategy. So we started out talking about investments that L&D made. We talk about investments of sales strategy and POA. Your best managers, your best coaches are looking at those strategic initiatives and breaking those down into skills which they can then coach to. We've seen for years how some managers just regurgitate sales results and metrics and plug that into their FCR, and that's that. And that's the opposite of what we mean when it comes to transformative. So focus really does matter. The last piece is quality. And when it comes to quality, that may be the number one differentiator between your top managers and the rest of the team. So Pam, if you advance it, we'll talk a little bit about what we mean by quality coaching. So we use an acronym here that, again, we've developed and refined over the years. It's just the basics. And each of those letters stands for a different one of the criteria that we look for in written coaching from managers. The B is for balanced, right? We want to make sure that managers are creating contrast between what they see now, whether it's about the rep's territory plan or the way they engage providers. Where is that person today and where do they need to be, right? That contrast allows for a balanced conversation. You have the positive reinforcement of the good things that you see, and you're contrasting that with a specific action plan to move ahead. So balanced is critically important. Actionable coaching makes ownership easier to do on the part of the representative, right? If they walk away from a day of coaching and they have specific things they need to do to reinforce that, that's going to accelerate their development and growth. So it takes that idea of coaching as something my manager does with me in the field, and it becomes an ongoing conversation. It can be supported with email or text or the next phone call that we have. It's another touch point that we have, that actionable coaching. Specific is pretty self-explanatory, but specific coaching is absolutely critical. The more specific the coaching, the more likely I am as a representative to be able to replicate that behavior that you as my manager want to see. Immediate coaching just means it's coaching on skills and behaviors that I observed in the current field visit, right? So many times we see coaching that's really nothing more than the halo effect. Oh, Pam, you've done such a great job over the last 6 months. You're a real leader on the team. It looks like you're closing in on President's Club. Yay, Pam. I mean, that's not really coaching. We want specific examples of what happened during the field visit. That's what we mean by immediate. Continuity is, and Pam, you're going to talk to this a little bit in terms of learning as well. You know, good managers, good coaches know that it's easier for a representative to adopt and assimilate a small number of behaviors over time, as opposed to 6 or 8 or 10 different things that my manager saw on that field visit. So, you know, there's this misconception in our business that the best coaches are the ones that write the longest field coaching reports. And that's just not true. You have managers out there that are good coaches, but they're writing War and Peace. And as painful as that might be for them, it's even more painful for the representative that has to read that. So the best managers know, even before they go in the field, what skills are they going to look to, what are they going to coach on, and what are they going to do next time, right? It's that whole idea of momentum in the developmental process that really drives growth. And then the last S is for supportive. And all that means is that those small number of skills, whatever they might be, support the long-term development of that representative. So if that rep wants to be a senior rep or a hospital rep, whatever that trajectory is, how do the skills that you're working on today support that long-term goal? So that's what we mean when we talk about quality and the basics. Now, once that analysis is done, right, we've taken a deep look at consistency. We've taken a deep look at what managers are actually coaching to, right? The focus. And we really have a good quantifiable handle on quality. We need to answer a question, and that question is going to help Pam, right? It's going to come down to one of two things. Number one, if there's an issue with consistency, right? The managers just aren't using the tool. They're just not getting out into the field. Chances are it's an expectations issue, right? There are still, believe it or not, some teams out there where the VP of sales has not stated clearly the amount of field time, the amount of field days, the number of times that somebody needs to use M-Coach in a given month or quarter or a fixed time frame, right? So if there aren't clear expectations around that, you're basically going to get every different kind of flavor of coaching. So number one, if it's an expectations issue, that's a little bit of a different animal, and that comes down to a communication strategy. But 8 times out of 10, it goes in the direction, the second direction, which is a training and development issue, right? We're identifying gaps in focus. We're identifying gaps in quality. not just compared to the industry. We can compare to the industry, but within an organization, right? And I hate to say it this way because it just sounds wrong, but there are the haves and the haves not, the have-nots, right? There are managers that just deliver great coaching. And 99 times out of 100, those managers are your top performers. And then there's the rest. And really what it comes down to, and Pam will speak to this in terms of training, is closing that gap, right? How do you train managers? How do you equip their second line leaders? How do you put together a solution for your organization to close a very specific, quantifiable gap? And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Pam.
Yeah, so I think that's a good way to say it. And the transformation does start with the first step, and dovetailing on what Ed just talked about. Sometimes the challenge with these things is it becomes really big. If there are a whole lot of things that we discover that need our attention or need focus, the first thing we need to do is prioritize. So the expression that we used here is, so how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time, baby. So we chuckled a little bit as we put that in there, but it's really true. It's big, and we need to prioritize and tackle one thing at a time. So let's look at one or two things that are perhaps the most significant gaps and develop targeted training to address those specific skills. So we'll tackle it one thing at a time, and the second thing, and the third thing, and so on, as we progress through the developmental process. It's very similar to what we encourage or what we measure with managers, is focus on one or two things, because that's the most that the person can absorb and really focus on training or focusing on improving. So that's really the gist of one step at a time, prioritizing and making sure that we're developing very, very targeted training for that specific step. And then we move on to the next one. The other piece that we want to make sure we emphasize here is there's another piece that sometimes gets lost. And that is to make sure that those first line managers are also getting coached. The second line managers really need to be able to provide effective feedback and high quality coaching to their first line managers for them to improve. And then of course, we want to measure that. So with mCoach, the commercial teams, all of them, sales, training, brands, they all can align around what great coaching looks like and maximize the impact of your strategic investments. With that repository of data or great technology, with the insights themselves, and then with targeted training, that really brings it full circle together to have high impact and actually create a transformative impact on your organization. And with that, we will close our session, and thank you very much for attending. We will be providing these slides via the L10 Connect website, as well as our contact information. So thanks so much for your time today. Ed, if you want to sign off, we'll close.
I just want to say thank you to you, Pam, and thank you to everybody for signing on and listening to the conversation, and hopefully we'll continue it soon.
All right.
All right.
Great. Everybody take care, stay safe.